once again, I just want to thank you all for listening to my go-to shoe, Faith, Hope, and Love, A Journey Through Loss, Live On, Strengthen Soul. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Touch the notification button so you know when Pauline's coming back. So we've been celebrating Women's History Month, and we're going to continue to celebrate it for some weeks to come. So thank you so very much. I just love interviewing these women, and we've got more women coming. So you'll see some every week. I'm not sure when we're going to stop because it just keep going. We don't know. This is a God thing. Let God do what God does. Anyway. Well, everyone, welcome to my go-to shoe, Faith, Hope, and Love, A Journey Through Loss, Live On, Strengthen Soul. And of course, before we get started, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and share. Touch the notification button so you know when Pauline's coming back. So today, I'm very excited. I have a special guest. I have Daphne Davies with me this evening, and she's going to share some history of herself, and she's going to share some history of someone else that we're going to talk about. Maybe not tonight, but you'll hear from another one of her dear friends. So we're going to get started. So Daphne, welcome. Thank you for being on. And before I let you get talking, I want to share with the audience, our folks out there, your history, because you have a great bio. I asked her to send me her bio, and I must read it. So Daphne was born in Richmond, Virginia. I'll say that. And then she says she has her claims to fame from bygone jobs. I want to say bygone jobs, serving food to Janis Joplin, which is quite significant, right? And Jane Fonda. And then brushing elbows with well-known drag queen at Max's Kansas City in New York City in 1969. She did that. But the one thing that I'm really excited about, she saved up $200 during this time of her life and went to Paris for the first time. Now that's pretty big. How did you go to Paris for $200? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, in 1970, you could get a round trip ticket on Iceland Air for $200. And I didn't have a bank account. I worked and I saved up the money in a cigar box. And by the time I was back, I was kind of starving, but but it was pretty cool.
That's very cool. Because when I read this, that is the one place that I really want to go to at some point. That's on my bucket list. But the other area I want to share with you about Daphne is that she is a published poet and has her collection, Hazel's Star, won the 1981 Washington Governor's Award. She has a BA and an MA, business and a master's degree in English, creative writing. So watch my English. Don't hit me too bad on my English because it's really bad. From University of UW?
Washington, yeah. University of Washington. In Seattle, yeah.
Oh, okay, in Seattle. Okay, University of Washington in Seattle. She wrote and privately published a chapter. I'm sorry, let me say this again. She wrote and privately published a memoir, The Book of Good Women, in which she celebrated chapter by chapter women who helped her get through her life. So she's going to be very good at this interview because she's known a lot of women and she celebrated women. And I think that's so important for us today that we celebrate ourselves. So I think that's great. She has a husband named Vinny, and she has two daughters, Amy and Corey. And then, of course, she's got a special granddaughter. Now, if I say her name right, is it Uma?
Una.
Oh, that's right. To N. Una. Oh, she's 5 years old. So, grandmas love their babies.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful area in your life right now. Now, does she live in your same area? Or do you have to travel to visit her?
They live within driving distance. And so I see them. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And so also, I think this is important, Daphne, because you at one point you were really exercised. So you must be still very fit.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Well, so she used to be a soccer player from the age of 27 all the way to 65?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I was fanatic. I love soccer. Soccer was like an addiction for me. I played defense.
Oh my gosh. So did your daughters play soccer too?
No, they hated it.
Maybe your granddaughter will play. You never know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
There you go. And so, but she says, but she mentions in her bio that walking is a better sport. Doesn't hurt as bad, I guess.
Right now it is. I mean, I was playing soccer with men too, and 23-year-old men are like, they're going to hurt you. So that's why I quit. Finally. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like to play sports because I don't like to get hurt. So I've never been a sport.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the one thing I want to mention, because this is going to be very important when we get to Madeline, uh, Daphne was descended from enslavers. Her interests focus on social justice, equity, women's health, Black cemetery preservation, and more. She is a volunteer at the local food bank, Fish Line. Her personal attachment to music includes blues, soul, gospel, Celtic, and bluegrass. But she mentions that in her recent years, she's broadened her horizon in music by a young Virginian PhD that she's aware of, or as a candidate that she knows of. We know
Who I met. Yeah.
that, who you met.
And who helped me out with some family history information I needed to put someplace. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. Yeah.
She's really good at what she does. She loves that. Peyton's really good at that. But anyway, so let's get started. And what I'm going to do is I would like to talk to you, ask you a few questions, and you can answer as you like. And if you don't want to answer, just let me know. We'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
So, what I'd like to know first, because I'm looking at your history and it's so rich, can you share a journey of your own personal self discovery and how it has shaped your life and the contributions to you, your family, and your community?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where to start, but I come from a family that was not didn't understand really how to love children very well.
Okay.
I was in a very beautiful place in Maryland, rolling hills and the Little Gunpowder River, and so we loved where we lived, but our lives were not really rich with family feeling, and that shaped sort of everything in my life, really, that followed from my childhood. So kind of a loveless childhood in a beautiful place.
Wow.
We lived there in Maryland till I was about 12 years old. Then we moved out to the West Coast, which is also beautiful again. But I would say that part of the reason that I wrote the Book of Good Women is to talk about chapter by chapter women who sort of got me through my life, because I didn't grow up feeling as if I was loved, but there were women who made me feel loved. And two of them were my aunts who lived in Richmond, Virginia. They were old enough to be my grandparents. My older aunt actually had had children before my dad had been born. So, they were like grandmothers to me, and they did make us feel loved. They make the kids feel the love.
Let me ask
Um,
you, but before you go on, let me just ask this question. When you say the word loveless, to you, what does that mean?
it means I never felt that anybody thought I was worth paying attention to, um, which also leaves you with low self-esteem. You
Hmm.
don't believe in yourself. Um, it's like you don't matter.
And there were other siblings along with you. Do you feel that
Yeah,
everyone felt the same as you
yeah.
did?
Yeah,
Okay.
we did. We all did. There were actually six children born into my family. One died as an infant. And then something I'll talk about at whatever degree you want me to is that my oldest brother, who we all worshiped, we thought he was the leader of the pack, a guy named Tommy. Um, he died by suicide when I was 18.
Oh my goodness.
And I would say that that kind of informed my life for many, many, many years. Just having to sort of miss him and go through the grief process, which, because I didn't really have much to facilitate the grief process, it took till I was in my 60s for me to feel as if I had sort of resolved
It's
his
interesting.
loss.
It's interesting. The grief process is so long. I don't think it ever really goes away completely. I think it's just with you, and
Yeah.
sometimes it just raises its head and it's kind of sits heavy, but it doesn't really go away. But do you think that Tommy committed suicide because of that loveless home life that he had? That you all.
Well, I would not hazard a guess as to all of the things that were in his mind, but my family inherited depression,
Oh, okay.
clinical depression.
Mhm.
And he had been diagnosed as schizophrenic. He had been actually sent to Richmond to live with my aunt for about half a year to get some therapy. And the doctor said they felt they had done what they could for him. and they called it schizophrenia, but that was in the 1950s. They probably had one term for any mental situation
Exactly.
whatsoever. It was schizophrenia. Um, but I have eventually come to the place where I accept and understand what he did. Um, uh, I think I have this thing that I say. I think I've said it to you maybe in my comments on your on the go-to shoe. Grief is the gift that keeps on giving. So I think I've gotten beyond his death. I don't think I've gotten over it, and I don't think I ever want to get over it. I don't
Mm.
ever want to get over that in a particular kind of way, but I have gotten beyond it, and I do accept that he did what the only thing that he knew how to do to make his life to end whatever the pain was that he felt in his life. Um, so grief is the gift that keeps on giving because when we think about people that we love who are gone, we bring them back.
Yeah.
So even though I miss him, if I talk about him or I think about him, I think about a guy who was my big brother and made me laugh and who I loved. I mean, I really loved him. And he loved me. I
Mm.
mean, I think among the kids, we, we were a little bit like a gang, actually.
So you all felt like corralled your own love with each other, knowing
Yeah,
that you
we
didn't get it
kind
from
of
your
we
parents.
kind of got together and hung together. And I would say my poor mother. I feel so sorry for her sometimes when I think about the way that we sort of figured out ways to kind of get to her. You know,
Oh no.
we were kind of a gang.
Mm.
We were a gang, and we went to my aunt's house in Richmond one time, and we were like cutting up and being really bad. And she said, "If you keep on behaving that way, you're never coming back to my house again." Well, what did we do? We got worse. We
Oh, you didn't want to come back.
Well, she did let us come back, but anyway, enough
Wow.
of that.
Okay. I have a friend that says that all the time. Enough of that. So when you think, so let me ask you this question, because it's like that was a huge challenge for you as a young person. And what did you do to overcome that challenge? Like, what was like for all five of you? Well, no, all well, the five that were living. You all had a bond with each other because you weren't getting anything other than your physical being taken care of.
Yeah,
You weren't getting that physical hug. I mean, the hugs and
right,
loves that you didn't sense any of that from the family.
right. Part of what I did, I think, and I think it's hurt me some as an adult, is I became very individualistic. I
Mm-hmm.
sort of said, I'm not, if they're not going to let me in on what's going on, I don't care, and I'm not going to care. I'm just going to sort of do for myself, and I did for myself, and I think it's kind of hurt me in some ways as an adult
Mm-hmm.
because it's made me so individualistic that sometimes it's hard for me to count on people. And you have to,
Mm.
you've got to count on people. You've got to, but I always had friends, and I always had fun. And I always, this is going to be maybe what you'll understand. I always knew that God was protecting me. I
Mm.
do not
Mm.
know why I know that, how I knew it. I also didn't inherit the depression, thank God.
Oh, thank God. Yes.
But my sister did, and my younger brother did. I mean, I dodged the bullet. I don't know how, but I always knew I was being taken care of. I do not understand how I knew that, but I did know that. I
Well,
knew
the
that.
spirit. I think that comes from the spirit, and you didn't really understand it, but it's the spirit that would have kept you like that because it's
Yeah.
the only thing that could. So that's so significant, and for you to tell the story because people need to understand that there's times in your life that you're going to feel, and there were a lot of times in your life that you felt like God's bringing me through. Something's bringing me through, and it's not me because because everything was beyond your control. So you
Yeah.
knew that He was taking care of you. But I wanted to ask you a question in reference. Were you able to forgive your parents for their behavior?
Yes.
Or did you have an understanding
Yes.
or they didn't
And
know any better?
well, one of the things you asked were about significant challenges and impactful moments. Um, One of the really impactful moments that I've mentioned is when Tommy died. I also had a very deep religious experience, and I'm not going to go into the details of it right now, but I had a perception of being comforted right after he had died, in a way that was very deeply spiritual. Um,
Can
and
you share it? Would you like to share it?
I won't.
Okay. Okay.
With you, I'll share privately,
Okay.
but I
That's
won't share it otherwise. Okay.
publicly understood.
But
No
all
problem.
I know is I was very deeply comforted after
Mm,
he died. But I will say his death affected my entire life. And when I wrote that book called The Book of Good Women, I did not realize as I wrote it the degree to which my brother's loss was woven through the story of my life, because it's
mm,
chronological, and it takes me through becoming a young mother, going through college and becoming. Anyway, yeah, I was able to forgive my parents. And here's how this happened. It took a long, long time. I was in my early 70s, and I'm almost 79 right now.
mm-hmm.
I was in my early 70s, and I was at a church event, and it was a meditation, and there were a series of affirmations that you made in this meditation. And one of them was, I am well, I am healthy, I can be kind to myself. And I was thinking those things in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to I can be kind to myself, a voice inside my head said, who do you think you are to deserve kindness? You don't deserve kindness. And I thought, my God, where is that coming from? And what I recognized was that I knew where it came from, but now it came from me.
Mm-hmm.
I owned it. The people that made me have those words in my head had died 20 and 40 years ago. Okay.
Oh,
I'm 70, and I'm realizing that I have a voice inside my head that I'm telling myself. So I just had a moment where I just thought, I've got to change this narrative. I have to see this differently. And I started working on saying, I can be kind to myself. I can be kind to myself. I can be kind to myself. And I went to our priest, and she was going to be at the cathedral for a confirmation service. And my parents' ashes are in the basement of the cathedral in Seattle, because they were ordained deacons in the
mm,
Episcopal Church. And I just said to her, this is a weight that I realize this is hurting me.
mm.
Me being mad at my parents for all the things of my life, it's hurting me. It's not hurting them. They're gone.
Right. That's right.
So I asked her to do a prayer with me outside that chapel. And we went downstairs, and she put her hand on my shoulder, and she said a very simple prayer. And she walked away and went upstairs. And I thought, I am laying down. I am laying down being angry at them. And I laid it down at the door of that chapel, and I walked away. And I thought, oh, I'll backslide. You know, it'll be
Mm-hmm.
hard, but I'll backslide. But I didn't. I
Mm.
just let it go. I
Oh, that.
let it go. And I'm still telling you the truth about what I think their capabilities were as parents. But my sisters and brothers and I, we used to sit around and we would tell these terrible stories. Do you remember the things that they did? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? And I called up my brother and my sister, and I said, I want you to know I'm not telling those stories anymore.
Oh, that's
So,
beautiful.
it's like God just immediately let me off the hook.
He released you. He released you totally.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
you were released from that because
yeah,
those words that have been playing a record in your head for all those years. Finally, you said, "No more, no more." And I think people don't realize how the self talk that we have to self talk to ourselves has got to be positive. It's got to be
yeah,
good so that we can move forward in life. Because otherwise, like you said, you were 70, and this is the one thing about I want people to realize why I really try to talk to younger people because I want them to find this out before they get to be 70. Because I feel like I'm
yeah,
I'm just getting stuff now.
yeah,
You're just getting it now because I'm
really.
75. And I'm like, oh gosh, I should have got this like 10, 20 years ago. Why did I get it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so let's see. What's my next question? Oh, well, you've kind of shared your challenges and what you've overcome, and your spiritual experience provided strength throughout your journey, which is outstanding.
It has, but Pauline, before you ask your question, I want to tell you one really quick thing.
Oh, sure, take
And
your time.
that is, I had a point at which I quit church at all for 25 years,
Oh, wow.
because the church that I was in, the clergy person there did something very wrong to children in the
Mm.
church. And I tried to get the bishop's office to pay attention to that. Other people did too. I wasn't the only one. And they wouldn't. And I quit. I thought, okay, I will still worship. I'll go out in the woods and I'll worship, but I won't be in a church. So for 25 years, I stayed away from church. But about 12 years ago, I landed in this church that's quite beautiful physically, and also it's kind of a little more open. It's a sort of a more open situation than most
Hmm.
Episcopal churches. And I went into that church and I heard a guy start to speak, and he said, God loves you.
Mm.
And I started to cry
Mm.
because, when you're a kid, when you grow up a kid and you didn't feel loved, to have that said to you, it's so powerful. So I just didn't, but for a while, I just was like, just the church is corrupt and I'm done with it.
But it's so true though. So many churches are corrupt, and people go away for years and years at a time, and then they end up coming back. But I think that the one area that you mentioned that you felt so strongly is that word love. We've got to feel that from it has to come from someplace, and I think that's why it's so important for each one of us to show love to others. And
Right.
sometimes it's in a very simple way. Sometimes it's just speaking to people, just showing a little bit of generosity. How you doing today?
Yeah. Right.
Just fears. Sometimes we think it's got to be a lot of money, but sometimes it's just something very simple that we can share with others, so that they know that God does love them. Because I think that it's all about love. I think, and I'm not going to get into this conversation really, but I think that's part of what our political situation is today. Is that I don't think some folks have ever received any love and don't know what it is and has never felt it, because the things that we're doing today just wouldn't be the way they are if we were really doing what God would have us to do.
I think you're making a good decision for us not to discuss the way that the world is right now, because
It's not a good,
otherwise
yeah.
I would say things you really wouldn't want to hear.
No, we're going to move right on from that. But so impactful moments, and you said that when your brother died, that was a. Do you think that would have been a pivotal moment when he died for you? Because that was kind of a grief moment, but was that a pivotal moment? Like, what was it that motivated you to keep moving forward in your life? Like, what was it that moment that you really felt like you had to keep moving forward?
Um, that's a hard question. That's a super hard question. As I said, I was always so individualistic that I kind of knew I needed to keep going forward. And also, this might sound kind of crazy, but when I was 18, I was a senior. He died in February. I was going to go to college the following autumn. Um, when I went to college, it was the first time I got to be in charge of my own life instead of having my parents be in charge of it. And I recall very clearly being on the University of Washington campus and hearing the carillon bells ring and the sun was out, and saying to myself, this is my life. This life
Mm-hmm.
belongs to me. They're not here. They can't have a thing to say about it. They can't have anything to do with it. I'm in charge. And I started to recognize that I could be happy, and that I could also do some things to be happy. So I got to be kind of a happiness junkie for a while.
So
You
you
know,
you did a total flip. You said, okay,
I I
I'm not
just
going
like,
to be
okay,
miserable.
they're miserable, and that's a miserable situation, but I can be happy. And so I sort of gone into like, this is how I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be a happy person. And I really worked on it. I worked on, let's get happy. Let's have joy in our life, so forth. None of that was religious. That was just me wanting to enjoy life and doing it, and with some backsliding in between. I've been pretty successful in lots of ways.
When when you had your children, you probably felt joy then as well, right? Because when you started a
Absolutely.
family, and so, but I mean, my question is, so many times the way you've been raised is the way you are with your family, and so how did you fight that? Because sometimes that can be a deterrent when you're raising your own children, that you're taking back the way all that you knew because that's how you were raised. How did you kind of change that narrative?
I'd say that in general, I had made up my mind that I was going to be a mother who loved her children, and it wasn't hard because I absolutely adored them, and
Mm.
I wanted to let them know how much I adored them. And so I worked on it, but I went and took classes.
Oh,
I
good.
literally took classes. There was one called How to Talk So Your Children Will Listen, How to Listen So Your Children Will Talk. I had to take classes. I also had a mother in law who was a very wonderful mother.
Oh,
And she was just, she was, she's in a chapter in this book too. You know, she was like a role model. Laura Bell was her name. And I adored her and I paid attention to her and I looked at how she worked, how she operated with her children and her grandchildren. And I just tried to take some pages out of her book.
that's beautiful. Because like you mentioned, you said the name of the book, there were so many women in your book that helped you along the way that you
Yeah.
could take those things from each one that strengthens you to be who you are and make you the best mom that possibly can be, right? Because it just makes
Yeah.
things
But
easier.
the book, because you asked, the book culminates with a chapter about my daughters.
Oh, okay.
Um, I never thought I was going to have children because I did not think I was a normal person. I thought I was a weird person or a strange person or a different person. So having children was like just this most amazing gift and blessing. And I still feel that. Um, it just felt surprising. Like, how can I be that normal and have these beautiful daughters and be a mom? And, it just seemed like, wow. And
Wow.
and it still does.
That- that-
I just didn't think I was going to get married or have children because that was way too normal. Right.
wow. So what made you think that you were so different that you wouldn't be able to have children? I mean, did you think what was about you that
I don't know.
you don't know? You just felt like you couldn't do
Well,
it.
because my family is,
A little odd.
they, I mean, I don't think my family is probably actually terribly different than a whole bunch of
I was,
families in
it's
this
probably that.
world,
Hmm.
but I didn't think we were normal.
I think, it's interesting because back in the day, people didn't really talk about their family because everybody, you just didn't. But I think a lot of us grew up in these dysfunctional homes that nobody really realized that, they didn't have that word. They weren't using that word dysfunctional. But then as you get older, you think, that wasn't right. That wasn't right. You can go over that and think, well, could have been different. But yeah.
Well, and our neighbors were farmers, and I loved them. And their mom was a farm wife mom. And when she would cook a meal, she would just like go to town. You'd have you'd have all the things.
Hmm.
You'd have all the things and all the sides and all the pickles, and you'd have the butter and the bread, and you'd
Everything.
a dessert time. You might have, two or three types of dessert. Anyway, she was just fabulous. Well, I just looked at them. They're normal. They love each other. They tell each other that they love each other. She cooks these fabulous meals, and so that's what I thought.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your career, when you in your work stream. What was that like?
Well, I've had a million of them. When
The one that's most significant.
I've had a couple of pretty significant ones. One was as a public information person for the City of Seattle Arts Commission. That was a really good
Ooh,
job.
arts. That does sound
I
exciting.
really liked it. I interviewed artists. I wrote about artists. I got people to take photographs, and I made a newsletter about the arts. This was public funding, City of Seattle public funding. Well, that was a really super good job. And I left that job when my second daughter was born because I just couldn't put two different kids in two different daycares and
Mm.
make my life work. Um, I also think being a public school teacher was pretty interesting. It was challenging for me because I never felt like I did it as well as I should have.
Hmm.
But man, I never liked being a teenager, but I like teenagers. They're very cool people. They're very straightforward. So I really enjoyed teaching. And then teaching led me also into teacher union work and labor negotiations,
Oh,
which
wow.
I really loved because I kind of like I kind of like
Negotiate.
I kind of like fighting.
Oh, you.
fighting the man, kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
like fighting the power structure.
So you're
So,
kind of
you
tough.
know, so I mean, that was kind of cool. And then at the end of my career, I did a project management job, which was the job from hell, but they
Ooh.
paid me so well that I was able to save up a retirement. And
Oh, that's outstanding. That
I never had any retirement money before that.
is
Um,
that right? Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah. The waitress job in New York City was the most interesting job because I got to, like see all these celebrities. And I didn't even know that men dressed up as women when I found out about the drag queens at Max's Kansas City. So I literally didn't know men dressed as women. These gorgeously dressed, highly made up women would waltz in, and I said something about a drag queen named Holly Woodlawn to the maitre d'. Oh, Holly is so beautifully dressed and has her makeup so perfectly. And he said, "That's not a she." I went, what are you trying to tell me?
So you didn't quite get it. You're like, what? I
Yeah,
must be
yeah.
wrong.
What? And I was graduated from college at that time, so
Oh
you can
wow.
see I was a little naive.
You were naive. That's right. Okay, but
Yeah,
that's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
Well, I think, I want to ask you another question before I get to the inspirational figures in your life. And you mentioned a couple, but um, if someone, maybe I should ask at the end. I'll ask it now. If there was one word that you could say that would describe you, what would that one word be?
I I can't answer that right now.
Well, maybe by
I
the time
can't.
you think later after we finish, you think you could answer it? Just
Possibly,
one word,
possibly.
possibly. Okay.
Yeah.
So now my next question is going to be, and we'll get back to the the other one word. Um, what is it? What? I know you've had several women in your life that have been inspirational to you, but who would you say has been the most significant? Or even you could talk about a couple, but if you want to just talk about one, that's fine. That's your choice. But who really inspired you and taught you lessons that you really learned from?
I
And
I
what were
think
those
I've told
lessons?
you I really would love to talk about a woman named Madeline Miller.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
She's actually in that book of Good Women. There's an introductory chapter that sort of sets up the scenario of these children and where they lived and what our lives were like a little bit. And then it just says, this is going to be a book about good women who helped me get through my life. And the first one that I talk about is Madeline Miller, because Madeline Miller is the first person I knew in my life.
Mm.
Um, she was 19 at the time she came up. She lived up in the country in Maryland, not far from where we lived, as it turns out. I just found this out because I worked on a genealogy for her. She doesn't seem to have any living family members, so I worked on a genealogy because I was curious about where she came from and so forth. She came from Virginia. She came from Hanover County. Her dad was a farmer out in East Hanover County, and he had been in that area for a long, long time. At any rate, she and her mother and her siblings had moved up to a place near where we lived out in the country, north of Baltimore. She graduated from high school in 1945, and she had a daughter in 1947. And in 1947, she took on domestic work and came to help look after a baby, which was me. She
Oh.
had a baby, who was my age, and she came up to help look after me because my mother went back to work. So she was somebody that I had in my life from the time I was old enough to understand that there was a life. And because the family was sort of wacky, when she would be there, it would be these moments of kind of calm, um, peaceful.
Mm.
She was very caring. She never was touchy feely. She never was tried to sort of be motherly or any of that. But she was just this quiet, um, lovely presence in
Mm.
our lives. And all the Enslow children feel the same way about her. She eventually went on after doing domestic work for several years. She went on and went back to school. She became a bookkeeper and worked in Baltimore. And then she went back to school again and became a special education teacher. Well, she became a special education classified worker first, and then she got her degree her bachelor's degree in special ed, and then she got a bachelor's, then she got a master's degree in special ed. And she also got involved in her church, which was a Baptist church in Baltimore called Enon Baptist Church. Um, she died relatively young in her early 70s
Mm.
from lung cancer in 2002. But even though we'd moved west, we always kept in touch with Madeline. We called her Mac. We had a nickname. It must have
Oh,
been when we were little children, we couldn't pronounce her name, but we called her Mac. And so we kept in touch with her, and she kept in touch with us. She came out in 1962 to Seattle, and she went to the World's Fair, um, and then went back and sort of gone on with her life. Um, she just was a woman who had so much self-respect and so much tenderness and kindness and hard-workingness to herself as this young woman. By the time I was conscious, she would have been maybe 21. So she was 19 when she started working for our family. She would have been 21 when I would have really begun to understand who she was. But she didn't put up with nonsense. She didn't put up with any disrespect. She just was a absolutely wonderful role model. At the end of her life, she finally was ordained as a pastor in Enon Baptist Church 1 year before she died.
oh wow.
Was a huge life goal for her to do this. She was really excited when this happened, and then she unfortunately died. But Enon Baptist Church in 2024 put together a scholarship in her memory, and I got to go. We're going to go visit your granddaughter in Richmond and do some research in Richmond.
Oh, okay.
And after that, we drove up to Baltimore. They were going to have this scholarship thing. And so I get to see them give the first Madeline Miller Scholarship. And what it, what became important to it about it to me was, I think I said to you at some point, death is not the end of it.
No, it's not.
Death is not the end of it. And it's like the scholarship that you established for your grandson,
My son.
your son, excuse me. You, when when life pays a life forward in that way,
Mm.
the person is still alive because their life is still affecting somebody else's life.
No, I
That's what I love about this thing about Madeline Miller, is her life is paying forward to somebody else's life, because the scholarship is going to people who are either learning to be special education teachers or who are special education students wanting to go to college.
Mhm.
Just in the same way that Hollis's scholarship is enabling students who play basketball, which he
Yeah,
loved. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's. I've been thinking a lot about when people die lately, because I'm at the age now where
I
people
know
that I
you do think
know
about it, right? We think
are,
about
well, you
it.
think about it, and people that I know are dying. Um, when people die, if they don't entirely die, their life goes on because they affected people who knew them and loved them. And
Mhm.
so that's why I wanted to talk about Madeline Miller. I just, she was just she was a moment of sanity, a person of kindness and caring in a life that we did not feel had served up love and caring to us.
And was she in your house throughout the whole day, like from 8 to 5? Is that how
Yep.
you?
She
Okay.
was to start with, or I think she was to start with. I was little enough, I don't always remember this, but I believe she was there days, or at least several days, because my mother was working part time um, in the beginning. And then as we got older and started going to school and so forth, she would only come 1 day a week. But we knew there was 1 day a week that life was going to be sane, it was going to feel right, you know. Um, how she did the work, I don't know. I mean, we lived in a huge old rambling stone house that was, you'd get snakes that would come in from the roof, and you'd get
Mm.
wasps that come in through the cracks in the plaster. I mean, how she ever did the work she did, I don't know. But she was, I was going to say to you, I had written this down earlier. Um, I don't necessarily know that she was a saint, but she was absolutely an angel.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'm thinking about her working at your house, and you had mentioned that your siblings, you were like a gang.
Yeah,
So
we were.
I'm thinking about her as a woman coming into this household at 19 years old,
Oh,
and she's got these five kids who are acting just insane, and now
right.
she's coming in. She's got to kind of corral that in at least
She
that one
did.
day a week, and
She did.
obviously she was able to capture that with you all.
You didn't mess with her. You know what I mean? You know the kind of person. I mean, she was soft spoken. She was kind of probably a little shy as a person.
Mhm.
You did not mess around with
But she
Mac.
got
You
she got
did
her point.
not.
She got her point across, and it sounds like you all listened to what she had to say, and you abided by the rules. When she
Yeah,
was there, you abided by the rules.
yeah. In part because we loved her. And I was talking to my sister not too long ago, and she was talking about how much she loved Mac. You know, so we just loved her. So that's all there is. What can I
Okay,
say?
well, that sounds beautiful. It actually sounds a beautiful relationship, and actually a good segue to say that thank you so much for this interview because how we were raised and how we lived is a part of who we are, and sometimes we get the good and we get the bad and we get the ugly, but the beauty of it is that we become stronger people from it. And it sounds like your family, you went through some tough times at a very young age, but you raised two beautiful daughters, and even with the loss of your brother, there's lessons there too. So God continued, and like you said, somehow God just made sure he took care of you. He just made
Yeah,
sure this one I need to make sure she's okay. And I do think some people get that. Some people got something special where God says, no, this one's don't no don't mess with this one. So I think you received that love from him for sure. And so,
yeah,
and people don't realize it, but God is like that. And even though no matter what their life is like, they just need to continue to hold on to his unchanging hand. And I always say, I always hold up my hand like this, hold on to his unchanging hand, because sometimes even though you can't see him, you can't feel. If you just do this, you just do you're gripping, holding tight to that strength that he has, because we don't have it ourselves. So I just thank you for this interview. But since you don't want to answer that one question, what would you say to your younger self? What would you say to your younger self now? To your
I think I would say what I have heard now said to me, which is, you are loved.
mm,
I love you. I mean, I actually did a lot of self therapy over the years where I would imagine going inside my head. I would see myself as a younger child, and I would go and I would take that child and tell that child that the child was loved.
mm.
Like, I love you, and I'm going to take care of you now. It's my job now. They don't own you anymore.
Yeah.
They're not in charge. I
They're
am, and I love you, you know.
And that's a beautiful seg. I was going to say, what would you tell younger women and older women too? You would probably tell them the same thing. I mean, is there something that you would say to them that would to help them on their journey in life?
I think what I want to say to people when I have the chance is, you are loved. You
Mm,
are important. You matter. What you care about matters. Um, and and if people can feel that,
mm,
then they're not going to put up with being treated poorly. It took me a long, long time to not be doing things that were counterproductive to myself. I mean, I had
right.
some very bad years where I sort of fell for a guy the year after my brother had died, where it was an extremely bad relationship. And
Mm,
and the only reason I was in it was because I didn't think I deserved anything other
yeah,
than to be treated poorly, which is terrible. You
that is
know,
true. Yeah,
you deserve to be loved. People deserve to be loved and cared about in a good way.
in a good way. It's funny you say it, because I think I look at my little great granddaughter, and the one thing she's going to know when she gets older, that she was loved. She's going to know that without a shadow that
She is so loved, that
her
child. And
grandma and
I
her
when I
her
see her,
family,
she
they loved her to
reminds
pieces.
me of Una a little bit, because Una's 5 and your great granddaughter is 4. The other thing about her that I
Yeah.
saw is, that she was doing taekwondo, and I did taekwondo once.
Yeah.
I didn't get any further than the yellow belt, but I will tell you, taekwondo is so powerful because it tells a woman to do this. a woman puts her hands up
Oh,
and says, it's like, don't mess with me. I have the power. This was like learning a foreign language for me to do that. That's like a
right,
foreign
right,
language
right.
for a lot of women.
They
We're
want to
taught
fight
to
for who
keep
you
our
are. And
hands
fight
down at
for
the
yourself.
side. Yeah.
Mm,
Anyway,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
anyway,
Well, Daphne, I am so glad this is, and people, family out there, this is the first time I've met Daphne face to face. So at some point, when you come to Virginia, you have to sup with me and have dinner at my home with Peyton and the whole family, and we'll have all the things. We'll have all the things. Bring your whole family. We'll have all the food, everything. Because
that would be great.
well,
So I have a quick question for you before we get
sure,
off. Did you
sure.
teach your daughter to cook?
No, that's a good question. No,
Because your daughter is like the
she's
most
amazing.
amazing cook I have ever seen in my freaking life.
Now you
I can hardly look at what she cooks. It's just so amazing.
Well, Mashia is really that gift really came alive after her dad died. And I think that's her way of dealing
Oh,
with her grief, to be honest. I think that
oh,
that's how she deals with her grief because she just does things that are just unbelievable. I'll be like, okay, okay. So no,
yeah,
it did not come from me. My husband was a great cook, and he loves to cook, and he would be so excited if he could see what she does. He would be just like, oh my gosh. He said she's really doing all the things. So
yeah.
we're
So
always
he's
getting
living
some.
on through her.
He definitely
See
is living
there?
out through her. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
So, Daphne, thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I appreciate your time and spending this time with me, coming on. It's just such a gift and such a blessing for us. So, this will be out probably either Friday or Saturday, so you'll get to see it. So, thank you again, and hopefully we'll meet face to face sometime in the near future. We'll say in the near future,
I
but
hope so too.
yeah, but God bless you, and thank you so much for this time. It's so much appreciated. So, as I always say before, as we're ending, and Daphne, say goodbye to the people. So, thank you, and
Thank you.
as I always say, don't forget to this is my go-to shoe: faith, hope, and love. A journey through loss. Live on, strengthen soul. So please, share, do all the things. Do all the things. Okay. Thank you so much, Daphne. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. One added note that I want to make sure I get in is I had asked Daphne what was one word that would describe her, and she sent that to me, and the word is grateful. So I just wanted you all to know that Daphne describes herself as being grateful. I didn't want to leave that out. That's an important aspect of who she is. So let's leave that. But anyway, you all, again, take care. Love y'all. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.